purpose of this presentation is to show to an audience of teachers what exactly vocabulary is and why it is so important in the classroom when teaching students. We also were able to find many different techniques and strategies that we think are great to help enhance this vocabulary learning in the classroom when it comes to getting creative with our students. We used several different articles when doing our research in order to prove our point that vocabulary is not dead and it is very much needed in our classroom today, a concept some people do not quite understand. To begin with, let's talk a little bit about what vocabulary is and why it is so important to our children and the upcoming generation. Vocabulary is simply the knowledge of words and word meanings, and as teachers, we should know that the knowledge of vocabulary is a critical factor for the development of reading skills of our young children. There are 4 types of vocabulary. The first is oral vocabulary, which refers to the words we understand when we communicate orally or someone reads aloud to us. The second is print vocabulary, which refers to the words we know when we read or write. The third is receptive vocabulary, which are words we understand when we listen or read. This type of vocabulary initially plays a key role when children are learning to read. And last but not least, productive vocabulary, which encompasses words that are used during speaking and writing. Now, when it comes to teaching words and their meaning, we want to focus on not only the words the students are learning during reading, but also during writing and conversations. This way, the student is practicing using these words in sentences, speech, and so on, so that the meaning is known to that student. For students to be able to comprehend a vocabulary word, the word should be exposed multiple times along with the context of the word. In the article, The Vocabulary-Rich Classroom, Modeling Sophisticated Word Use to Promote Word Consciousness and Vocabulary Growth, the author states that most researchers would agree that both breadth and depth of vocabulary knowledge are important, which simply means that knowing a word and its meaning is good, but the depth of vocabulary, such as the root words and their meanings, the place this word originated from, things like that, are also very important if a student is trying to gain vocabulary knowledge, because there is a difference between knowing something and being knowledgeable about it. As I've said before, multiple encounters with a word are important for the students to be able to remember them. To actually learn the words, it is important for the students to be able to make connections from that word to their prior knowledge and experiences. It is also important for the student to be able to understand the context of the word and how one word might be a better fit than the other. The Vocabulary-Rich Classroom article also states that if children say the words out loud, they are able to create a phonological representation of the word in their heads, which will allow them to recall it easier later on. Any teacher at any grade level can follow these procedures for generating a list of words to teach through modeling. As far as techniques go, there are many different ones, but scaffolding is the most common when it comes to vocabulary. Scaffolding is merely building on the student's knowledge throughout the year. The teacher uses basic concepts at the beginning of the year, but then expands on those concepts by making the lessons more complex and engaging. This is a great strategy for teaching vocabulary. As you can see in the chart, there are many different scaffolding strategies, like modeling, read-alouds, graphic organizers, just to name a few. This encourages students to use more advanced words. Sentence structures and starters are used to incorporate new words into the classroom. With the intentional small group and partner work, the teacher can have the students say the words to each other, since all of the students are learning the same words and their meanings, and then using them in conversations. You want to avoid dumbing down our language for our students. One of the biggest barriers for vocabulary growth is the way many people talk to children. As a teacher, we should use more sophisticated terms for words the students already understand. In the same article, they say, avoiding oversimplification and exposing students to more mature terminology helps them be more confident as they progress to more complex content. Be a word-conscious teacher. This means promote word consciousness in students. In the second article we analyzed what reading teachers say about vocabulary instruction, voices in the classroom, It states that teachers' major concern with vocabulary instruction is how to develop a coherent district-wide program. Vocabulary instruction has almost disappeared in many classrooms, but now it is slowly making its way back in. Teachers, schools, and districts are focusing all their attention on vocabulary, which is an important element in literacy. Vocabulary is one of the foundational pillars of the curriculum and must be assessed in schools. Researchers found a strong and persistent link between vocabulary instruction and comprehension-based tasks. There was a survey done to find out what works for teachers when teaching vocabulary, and some awesome strategies were found. These strategies are the most frequently used and cited strategies today. So what practices are already working? The most common answer to this question is the strategy of working with word relationships and word parts. Teachers help students learn about words by showing them how word parts and analogous words assist in making the meaning of words. The second most cited practice was teacher read-alouds of high-quality literature or informational texts. Kindergarten and first grade students exposed to new words during oral storybook readings were found to repeat these previously unknown words in retellings. The third most commonly cited effective practice for student vocabulary growth was wordplay or word games. The authors of this article noted the ways in which play contributed to student word engagement and subsequent knowledge, and its connection to the research on metalinguistic aspects of word learning and word knowledge. Among the other areas cited as productive were use of word walls, classroom talk, integration with content area studies, and intentional creation of an environment ripe for exposure to challenging words. The survey also asks teachers to list their concerns or questions about teaching vocabulary. One of the greatest concerns of the teachers is a lack of district or building-wide consistency in vocabulary practices and the assumptions and shared vocabulary that underpin these practices. The analysis of these surveys led us to several broad conclusions. The first one is the wisdom of the teacher practice is in line with empirical research on vocabulary instruction. The second is teachers want to know they are working in a context where they are shared understandings about best practices for enhancing students' vocabulary knowledge. And the third is although teachers have particular strategies and practices they believe to be effective, they wish to weave together isolated practices into a systematic program of vocabulary instruction. As a group, we have come up with a professional development model that may help teachers to define and enact effective vocabulary practices. Scholars concur that teacher collaboration is essential for success in a school and that enabling encounters with very different practices will diversify teacher knowledge. When teachers are a part of a professional community, their own self-efficacy increases and they become more invested in their own work. Any new practice must start with teacher collaboration toward a shared understanding of the foundations of vocabulary learning. Teachers can start by doing an instruction audit of their own classroom habits to isolate their current practice relative to these three strands: study of word parts, highlighting vocabulary and read-alouds of high-quality literature, and playing with words. Once there are plenty of possibilities, teachers can discuss the practices they feel best suit the students in the grade, building, or district in which they reside. Teachers agree on the one or two practices under each category that they wish to pilot together as a building or district. It may take many months of piloting before a program begins to develop for the group. They may decide to review their program on a 3 or 5 year cycle so as to keep up with the freshest research. The goal is to find a common set of practices that can be used across classrooms and grade levels. In conclusion, educated teachers are aware of the needs of their students, their classrooms, and their schools. They are also aware of the need to be systematic and comprehensive in their instruction and are anxious to work together to make good vocabulary instruction happen. When analyzing our third article, Bumping into Spicy Tasty Words That Catch Your Tongue, a formative experiment on vocabulary instruction, we wanted to focus on exploring the impact of a comprehensive vocabulary instructional program on students' word knowledge and appreciation. This article describes how teachers can provide their students with a vocabulary-rich environment and also teach word learning strategies to help them develop a greater depth of vocabulary. Throughout the article, specific vocabulary ideas and strategies are displayed and observed in Donna's 5th grade classroom. During this classroom experiment, Graves' comprehensive vocabulary instruction program was used as an outline to guide Donna in her steps towards creating this vocabulary-rich environment. So what exactly is this Graves Comprehensive Vocabulary Instruction? Well, it is a way to provide rich and varied language experiences by teaching individual words, word learning strategies, and fostering word consciousness. This experiment of Graves' comprehensive vocabulary instruction was conducted in Donna Ware's 5th grade classroom from September through April. University collaborators Jim and Elizabeth helped teach lessons and collect data. Donna explains, in keeping with the formative experimental design, we used students' performance and our own reflections on the program to modify and refine the vocabulary instruction throughout the course of the study. In this vocabulary instructional program, they basically used Graves' 4 key components as their vocabulary instructional program. Donna's belief in the importance of writing in literacy development led us to integrate considerable composition into the 4 components. The first key component is providing rich and varied language experiences. In Donna's classroom, they provided students with new and interesting vocabulary experiences by reading aloud regularly, allocating considerable time for self-selected independent reading, conducting literature discussion groups, and exploring word choice and usage through writing activities. For an example, Donna's students used the Word Finder Think Marks idea in the form of bookmarks for an assignment in their literature discussion groups. These bookmarks provided the students with an opportunity to write down words that were new, interesting, and unusual to them, and also encouraged them to think about what the word means. The second component is teaching individual words. As stated in the article, research indicates that students acquire new word meanings through explicit vocabulary instruction, and Donna provided lessons and activities that focused on specific words that connected to reading, writing, and subject matter study. One way that Donna taught individual vocabulary words to the classroom is through word walls. Some word walls were based on interesting words that the students would find in the books they would read during independent reading time. Other word walls displayed content area vocabulary that reminded her students of word meanings from each subject. Another way that Donna taught her students individual vocabulary words was through read-alouds. For an example, Donna gave her students a chart of 4 words to discuss how well they know their word meanings before a read-aloud. After introducing these words to them, they read the text aloud together as a class while looking for the words to stop and discuss their meanings. The third component is teaching word learning strategies. In the classroom, Donna encourages her students to use additional resources and word learning strategies in order to discover the meaning of a word. Students were taught how to properly use a dictionary and a thesaurus to help them find the meaning of the word. They also learned the vocabulary rule. When you come to a word and you don't know what it means, use context clues and word part clues. Context clues is when you read the sentences around the word to see if there are clues to its meaning. And word part clues is where you can see if you can break the word into a root and prefix to help figure out its meaning. And the fourth component is fostering word consciousness. In the article, it states, word consciousness involves an awareness of and interest in words and their meanings. Various inquiries document that when teachers engage students in wordplay and promote their metacognitive knowledge about word use, students acquire an interest in words, develop an appreciation of word choice, and expand their vocabulary. In order to implement this category into experiment, Donna incorporates wordplay and figurative language. For example, she used our Learning About Words and Language chart to provide her class with definitions and examples of words related to poetry. Here's an example. In conclusion, from this little experiment Donna did with her classroom, their findings revealed 3 main themes. Students used more sophisticated and challenging words. Students' interests and attitudes toward vocabulary learning increased. And students demonstrated use of word learning tools and strategies independently and engaged in wordplay. The final article I will be discussing is virtual field trips for content vocabulary development. This article talks about virtual vocabulary field trips and why they are so important in the classroom when it comes to learning new vocabulary words. So what are vocabulary field trips? They are structured, read-aloud book experiences as virtual field trips for the classroom using scaffolded book read-alouds, active learning with visuals, and other activities that appeal to the sense while developing new concepts and vocabulary. Schools and teachers are limited to the number of field trips they can have each school year, so this is a great opportunity for the students, and these field trips actually help build vocabulary. There is content focus, engagement for the senses, preparation for new learning, involvement in the mediation of an adult, involvement in exploration, talking, reading, and writing by students, and involvement in a follow-up of new concepts and terms. The teachers talked about in this article decided to use the structures used for Read Aloud for the foundation of their virtual field trips. The grounded vocabulary visits in theory and research, therefore promoting vocabulary development through read alouds and active learning. These read alouds, aka shared storybook readings, give students the opportunity to develop new vocabulary as well as give them opportunities to use new vocabulary during active discussion after the read aloud. The article states that numerous studies have documented that young students can learn word meanings incidentally from read-aloud experiences, which supports our thinking even more. The article also mentions dialogue reading, which is when the teacher scaffolds a student's learning by asking questions, adding information, or prompting students. Students that are less likely to learn new vocabulary may see scaffolding as essential and may find that oral vocabulary is better developed through read-alouds instead. Active learning is a crucial part in these vocabulary field trips. Relating new vocabulary words to concepts that are already known is an awesome way to engage students and have them actively participate in storybook reading. It was proven to be more productive than passive listening when it came to learning vocabulary. Students being active in read-alouds is the most important part. The next step is planning a vocabulary visit, which requires identifying focal topics and assembling a list of at least 5 texts. This variation of texts and difficulty will provide for individual differences in scaffolding learning. You want to also choose a basic vocabulary set by reviewing the texts. One creative idea would be to make a poster that includes thematic pictures related to the vocabulary to spark discussion among students. This is an example of promoting active learning. Now, when it comes to the vocabulary visit, you want to focus on 5 main tasks for the students. The first task is Jumpstart and First Write. This engages the students by asking them to talk briefly about things they already know about the subject at hand. Include a first write so students can write down words that they think connect to the main topic. The second is doing a group talk, which is just getting the students to talk about what they read. The students can put words that they relate to, what they see on sticky notes, and then placing the sticky notes on a poster that is provided. Of course, teachers can mediate by giving students new suggestions and ideas if they are having trouble. When it is completed, group the words in a relational way for students to visually see what the different words have in common. Give this part of the visit about 10 to 15 minutes. The third task is called Reading and Thumbs Up. This involves reading the book as a group. When the students hear a new word, they simply put their thumb up. The goal is to have a fairly normal reading experience. However, when necessary, the teacher will need to reread a sentence when no thumbs go up for the key word. After the story is completed, the students may add a few new words to the chart after the students discuss what they learned from the reading. For a short writing activity, students could write in their reading journals about something that interested them or something that they learned. The fourth task is a simple follow-up, where the activities are repeated for each book and the visit poster is kept up in the classroom. To use the new words the students learned, the teacher could also come up with extension activities, which include rereading the books, word games, writing, etc. The final task is known as the final write. This includes 2 writing activities at the end of the visit, one explaining their learning and the other is listing the words that they learned in their meetings. This is a great way to show the students that they can now write about something related to the topic that was discussed in the book. The best way to conclude this article and to describe the impact of vocabulary field trips would be with this quote. They, the students, are proud of learning big and technical words, and the spread of words can be infectious, especially with those that are long, funny, or interesting sounding.